Hey friends, Jawa here, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today I'm going to share with you, basically it was a project that ended up causing me to obsess over it, and then I couldn't stop, and I spent hundreds of hours and probably about 2 weeks straight of just working on this nonstop every day for like 16 plus hours. And that is basically building MMOs, private servers. Now the reason I even got this whole idea to try it out in the first place was that there are these projects involving World of Warcraft, specifically like the original 3 versions of World of Warcraft, Classic or Vanilla, some people call it, The Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King. And what a lot of people have done is basically make these repacks where if you launch the repack and launch your game, you can run a local host private server on your own system. However, the caveat with these is that not only do you have like GM powers and everything, but you have access to player bots, which are basically these bots that run around and play the game like players, and they play player characters and all this stuff. And it's really interesting, and I was very fascinated by it. And so I was messing around with it for quite a while, and then I got this idea in my head. Can I do this kind of thing with another MMO? Can I make a private server in another MMO? Can I play them also with bots, or can they be played by themselves in some degree? Can they be modified to an extent to where it's almost like a single player game? So short answer is kinda. Yes, it is possible, of course, to make your own private server of other MMOs. I'm sure everyone kind of knows that that is a thing, not just for World of Warcraft. But as far as having player bots and the ability to modify them, I had various different results. So for player bots, just so I can kind of get this out of the way and someone isn't waiting excitedly for their favorite MMO to have player bot support, the answer is mostly no. There's one other MMO that has kind of a player bot system, but it doesn't have it in the same sophisticated way that the World of Warcraft single player project teams or Azeroth core teams have been able to program bots. However, I did find merit in trying to play the other MMOs as a single player game, and I can kind of get into that a bit more. But honestly, more than anything, this video is going to be about the fact that it is possible to run these kind of private servers on your computer, and it's just very fascinating. Now, just a quick disclaimer before I kind of get into this. Number one, I am not going to be sharing where I was able to acquire the means of server files, just because I am not so sure of how they were sourced. I don't want to end up, one, getting the people who are working so hard on these things and, you know, getting these server files out. I don't want to cause any trouble for them. And number two, I don't want to cause any trouble for my channel, because I am of the impression that some of these publishers for these games are not friendliest when it comes to how their IPs are used, I guess, in the best way to put it. So please don't ask me. I'm not going to tell you, but it is not too hard to find. So if you just do a little research, I'm sure you'll find it on your own. I'm sorry if this feels like I'm gatekeeping. I am not. I just, like I said, it's easy to find on your own if you want to find it. I just am trying to protect my channel, and of course, whoever out there is working on these projects. I don't know what goes into them in a legal sense, so I don't want to even like step on that landmine, so to speak. And one last thing, if you're interested in playing these, like I said, you can go out and find them on your own. I am not hosting these servers publicly. They're running locally on my machine, and it's only something I did as a project that interests me. So it is not a public server that anyone can play on any of these games. They're not available through me in any case. So the first game I'm going to be covering is Ragnarok Online. Now, to my understanding and research, I didn't actually play this game when it was available, and I think it might still be available, but I'm not 100% sure because I've heard mixed things about it. But when it comes to Ragnarok Online, I understand it is a very beloved game, and it is actually one of the easiest ones to run your own server on. There's plenty of easy to access repacks. It's not as easy as, you know, the single player project for World of Warcraft, but it is the most easy on this list that I was able to acquire and use. Now, Ragnarok Online is the one that I mentioned that does kind of support like player bots or whatnot, but I didn't quite get them running, and I did some research, and there is quite a bit that goes into it. Apparently, it can be anything from a very simple bot that you give commands to even bots that potentially have some thought, but it is nowhere near the level of player bots that the single player bot project is able to utilize. So I'm not going to really be, like I said, covering bots in these other games. Like I said, it's just not something that was possible. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to do this. I'm sure someone smart enough out there could program bots for any of these games if they wanted to. I mean, hell, every MMO has a botting problem per se, so I'm sure the technology is out there. But these bots just, you know, they're not going to act like kind of like that imitation of a player. Now then, with that being said, the game is very much playable from a single player standpoint. And per my research, the game does have like mostly single player content. Like most of it can be experienced on your own. But with the addition of GM powers, it essentially makes it possible for you to enjoy the game in any way you want, and you can modify the XP rates, drop rates, and other things on the server, so you can make the experience how you want it to be. And of course, this also expands into the premium currency and premium items realm. You can spawn any items you want for yourself. And of course, if you want premium cash up items that were available on the game before, you're able to generate those for yourself, or you can even just give yourself free cash shop items and buy stuff from your own cash shop. It's that easy, honestly. Now, I do kind of want to come back to the premium cash shop because every game I play on this list has some form of premium cash shop. And I kind of want to address how the games are without the premium cash shop being a thing. In other words, you have complete access to them. Now, I will tell you, I didn't play any of these games extensive enough to give a full opinion on the game or a full honest review, but I did play enough to get an idea of what it would be like if you remove those kind of cash shop barriers that they tend to put on newer players so that they will spend money. So back to Ragnarok Online. The game is completely playable. I explored quite a bit of it. Again, I can't sit here and tell you as someone who's played it before how accurate it is, but based on the research I did on the game and using the Wikipedia and stuff to guide me through certain quests that I wasn't sure how to complete, it did feel like the game was as authentic as it could be. Now, there's two versions I have access to. It's pre-renewal and there's post-renewal. I won't pretend to really know what that means, but my understanding is that it's kind of like a big update that was done to the game, and some people prefer the old school version, some prefer the new school version. I personally played the post-renewal version because it was the newest one, and it seemed like it was easier to get into. I haven't tried the pre-renewal yet, but it is something I might try in the near future. But from what I played in post-renewal, it is definitely an interesting game. I don't know if it's based on the most latest content patch that the official live servers had or have, but it does seem to have some of the most up-to-date content because, again, the Wikipedia and other articles that I used to help guide me through the game were fairly accurate. And I tried multiple things. I went to multiple expansion locations and checked those out. I, completed quests. I actually upgraded my class from a shinobi to whatever the upgraded ninja class was called that I kind of forgot. And I was able to complete those quests. They all worked normally. I was able to, like I said, go farm multiple monsters. Now, the XP rate was quite high, and I don't know if that was a setting already set up, because there are ways to go change it, and I did look at it, but I just left that as it was. But yes, the XP rate did feel very high, and with GM commands, yes, you are more than able to snuff out the life of any monster that is giving you trouble, or if you're having trouble with a quest or finding a quest item, you can just generate it for yourself if you don't want to bother trying to get it. That's completely up to you. I'm not trying to police how anyone plays the game. I'm just pointing out that the GM options there do make the game even more playable than it probably would have been if you didn't have those options there. So yeah, you have access to a lot of content, and I will definitely say that this is something you can easily play on your own time and enjoy it for what it is. I don't know exactly, like I said, what Ragnarok's strong suits are when it comes to the MMO side of things, but this is just my experience on playing it on my own machine as like my own private server. I will also say, side note, this game has amazing music. I really enjoyed it a lot, to the point where now I'm just constantly listening to compilations on YouTube of the various music and town themes, because the game just has such a good soundtrack. Like this soundtrack cooked is all I can say, and I'm kind of really impressed with it. I'm going to give Ragnarok Online a 99% playable rating, in the sense that from everything I've done and everything I've seen, barring the a bug here and there that may have cropped up, or barring any content that may be much more difficult without other players, the game seems to be completely playable from a single player standpoint. But again, this does not account for my lack of knowledge on the game or series, but I did do research on other people that has been playing on their own solo servers, and it does seem like it's very playable. So the next server that I was able to get running is probably something you may have heard of if you were active in the MMO scene around the 2010s, or at least in the free-to-play market, that is, and that would be Forsaken World. I specifically really wanted this, and so I was glad I was able to find a way to get it running, because I actually did kind of like the game. It was interesting when it came out. I did drop it very quickly, and it was for a variety of reasons, mostly because something that kind of irked me about it, but we'll kind of get into that in a bit later. But I remember that this game had some strange hype around it, which was kind of strange because it was coming from the Perfect World developers, and the Perfect World was obviously, this Chinese MMO, and a lot of people had this opinion of it, that it was like this very pay-to-win type game. Now, again, I am speaking based on, hearsay and rumors from back in the day. I can't tell you for sure if that's the case. I'm sure a Perfect World player will leave me a comment in here telling me how wrong I am, and that's okay. My point is, though, Forsaken World is no longer available. I do know that for a fact. In fact, on the actual launcher that I use to run my own server, it literally says the game has been shut down. Thanks for playing. That was back in 2022. Now, one of the things that really stood out to me about the marketing for this game back in the day was that, I don't remember if it was like a developer interview or a trailer, but they were essentially saying stuff like, we're not just following the cliches of other games. This game will be edgier and cooler than any other MMO, and there will be vampires, and instead of dwarves just being, bubble-gutted drunks, they're going to have guns, and instead of some boring other race, we're going to have stone men. It was kind of like put like that. That's not exactly what they said, but I do remember that marketing kind of tactic that they were using. And honestly, one of the most interesting, unique things about the game is, honestly, the vampire class. Now, having gotten the server up and running, it is exactly as I remember it, even though it looks like there's some additional content, races, and classes that are there now that weren't when I first played it when it launched. However, the big thing that irked me back in the day that is still there, and it kind of irks me a lot less now, it just kind of makes me laugh, but it's the fact that a lot of the sound effects in this game are ripped directly from World of Warcraft. And that might seem like a really silly reason to judge the game, especially when the gameplay is a little bit different in some ways. But for me, it was kind of like, I'm just hearing WoW. Every time I hear the sound, I hear World of Warcraft. And it just, for whatever reason, it kept taking me out of it each time. And when I mean sound effects, I mean things like UI sounds, some of the quests, turn-ins and stuff sounds, and even the monster sounds. There is a lot of monsters in the game that straight up just use ripped assets from World of Warcraft, like the zombies sounding like the undead in World of Warcraft, or the wolves or boars sounding very similar, and it was all just like very strange to me. Anywho, I gave the game about 5 to 6 hours of gameplay this time around, messing around with it, and the thing is that it's not going to be as playable as Ragnarok Online or the World of Warcraft single player project. And a big reason for that is because you have very limited ability in the GM section of the game. And I understand why it's that way, but pretty much 90% of all the GM powers were basically boiled down to something to help resolve tickets. So there were no powers available to me that like an administrator or someone of a higher level would have on this server. And I did try to implement them, but I wasn't able to quite get it to work. But if I was determined enough, I do believe I could get it working, but I kind of got to the point to where I wanted to move on to my next project. So I'm sorry to those who wanted me to experience more of the later portions of the game, but from everything I got to try, like combat work, it was possible to, at least access the cash shop and get stuff for free as a GM account, and it was possible to get, lots of gold very early on. But again, that doesn't really help you whenever you want to try to generate some high-level loot to test out builds, or if you want to go out and kill a boss by modifying your stats or whatnot. So again, it's going to limit your playability with the game, and so I'm only going to give this game about a 50% playability rating, unless you could figure out how to actually make the adjustments. Now, I will say this, there is a trick to updating the cash shop with items that you want in it, including items from the actual game. However, I kept trying to get this to work, but it kept causing client issues. And I know there is a way to get through it, but I had fought with it for so many hours. And like I said, I wanted to move on to the next project. I got the game up and running, and that was enough to satisfy me. So I kind of left it there. I think someday, though, because I am kind of interested in the game, I did enjoy playing it. I think I will try to go back at some point and try to make it work or find a way to give myself administration privileges. But until then, I will say, yeah, it's if you go out and you get the server files and everything, and you get the server up and running, you're only going to be able to probably experience about half the game, which is probably just leveling. Now, this next game, let me tell you, this is the game that ate up most of my time. This game took so much out of me, and it was not playing it. It was trying to get the damn thing to work. I could not, for the life of me, get this damn server to stop crashing at the login server section so I could actually get in through the game. And when I say crashing, I'm not saying when I tried to play the game client, it was crashing. I'm saying that on the server side of things, it continuously kept crashing. And that game was Aura Kingdom. Now, I've never played Aura Kingdom. This is another one that I've never played before, but I found the server files easily enough. In fact, they are quite popular. So I was interested in trying to play it, especially considering that out there was a tool that someone designed that would pretty much do the server setup for you. Let me tell you, that did not work for me. I don't care how many times I try, however I did it, I could not get that person's script to properly launch the server, because once it installed everything, the server still would not launch. And I don't know quite what was going on, but every time that it came to the login server, it would stop working. I probably tried for about 3 whole days straight of doing non-stop but working on the server, of trying to get it to run. I was literally getting out of bed, eating my breakfast at my desk, and trying to get the game to run and get the server up and running. I don't know why I was so determined, because I didn't expect anything like super special from the game or anything. It's just, and I've talked about this before on my channel, when there is a challenge presented in front of me like this, I can't stop myself. I get super hyper fixated and focused until I freaking fix that issue. And whatever it is, I get so determined, especially when there's some sunk cost fallacy in it, right? Once I start spending some time into it, you know, I just can't give up, because at that point it's like getting defeated, and I won't allow myself to be defeated by these things. So I continue to persevere. Now I ended up having to basically get the raw server files and trying to build it up myself, basically using the files to set up the server myself, rather than, you know, doing it through some script or some easier repack, which is what I did with the previous 2 games. So this did actually teach me quite a lot about what goes into it, because for the game after this I also had to do the same thing. So I rebuilt the server myself, and it still didn't work. This time I actually fixed the login issue, but then the gateway server wouldn't work, and then the billing server, and then it would just kind of flip-flop between those 2. So about 4 days later, and 3 servers built up from the ground up, and I still couldn't get it running, and I was at my wit's end thinking that I probably am not going to win this fight. Basically, what it was apparently that was going wrong was that the preloaded hash for the gateway wasn't correct, which, to my understanding, I don't even know how it was incorrect, but basically, I worked with ChatGPT on the last portion of it to see if I can get some way to get it figured out, and it basically told me to use a previous one that was already on the server, even though I was supposed to change it per other information I found online. Anyway, I put the old one in, and it just worked, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It just logged in, and it worked, and it launched everything. And ever since then, I've not touched anything, and the server has been running perfectly fine. It runs great, and I can actually make modifications to the database and the server via NaviCat. I cannot tell you the satisfaction that I had of being able to get this damn thing running. I don't care if this is the worst damn game in the world. The fact that I was able to actually get the damn thing running after all that time fighting it, jeez, man, I cannot tell you the satisfaction. And I was on a high for days. I swear, the next 2 days I felt on cloud 9 just from getting through this. So yeah, it was a journey, but I'm really happy I got it running, and I still have about 100 plus gigabytes of dead servers on my hard drive, but I won't even delete them because I don't know, I have some kind of weird attachment to them. And also it got so clustered up in my files that I'm not even sure which one is the working server at this point. Either way, this game also gives you full access to everything via GM commands, so you can do whatever you want. I was able to spawn in all kinds of cash shop armor, give myself whatever money I want. I can level my characters if I want. Whatever I wanted to do in the game, I could do it. And even if I use GM commands, for example, to kill a whole area of monsters around me, it'll like still give me the XP and loot and everything. So in this sense, I was able to mess around with the game for a bit, remove any barriers to a cash shop, and be able to do whatever I wanted. And yeah, the game runs very well for the most part. It does have some strange stuttering or hiccups every now and then, but surprisingly, it functions very well, and it runs all the quests for the most part seem to work. Some of them are still in Chinese for some reason, but that's not really that big of a deal, honestly. But everything was working. I did the scripted tutorial big event that they had. I tried playing around with higher level characters. I was able to set up as many accounts as I wanted. And yeah, so the game feels like it's playable actually 100%. Well, I'll call it 99% because you can't account for little things sometimes. But like if you were wanting to kill a boss or something, you're able to edit your own stats or the boss's stats via either NaviCat, or you could do it through GM commands in the game. So you can make the game completely playable on its own without the need for a party to complete certain aspects of it. The game also has player housing, which did work. So everything was there from what I could see. I don't think it was the latest update for Aura Kingdom, of course, because these server files tend to get pulled when they get pulled. But there is a lot of content there. There's multiple interesting classes and stuff. Like there's a class that you can basically play a guitar and it casts magic and stuff, which is really sick. And there's a lot of like cool mounts and store stuff that having access to is pretty interesting. The mounts are pretty extravagant, for example. But this game completely, from everything I did, I spent maybe like 10 hours with it. Like I said, lower level character and higher level character, and yeah, everything goes really well. It runs really well. I can't, like I said, speak completely for the game, but it just felt like just a general MMO for the most part that was designed with a lot of cash shop in mind. So without the cash shop, it's just kind of a average MMO for the most part. The last game that I got up and running for private server is a game that I did play for a bit back in the day, which was Runes of Magic. Now, Runes of Magic, if you know what it is, you know that it was basically a company's idea to make a free-to-play version of World of Warcraft. It copies WoW very hard. There are some unique mechanics and other things to the game, but the basis of it is obviously to be a WoW clone, but to offer it to people who either couldn't afford the subscription to World of Warcraft or didn't have access to it by some means. Either way, Runes of Magic was there to pick up those players. And of course, it has a cash shop, just like everything else. And I do remember when I played, the cash shop was quite annoying because, you could purchase like mounts and stuff through it, but they could either be temporary or you can spend more money to eventually get like a month mount or a mount that was permanent, stuff like that. I know the game is still up and running, but when I research into it, it doesn't seem like it's as active as it used to be. Now, I will say, running my own private server, this game does have some glaring problems with it when it comes to the private server side. The game works, so I'll just get that out of the way. Like, the game works. The playability of it is fine, at least on a basic level. The problem that comes in is, one, I had to set up the server manually this time. It wasn't nearly as hard as the Aura Kingdom. I was able to get it within, I don't know, maybe a day, maybe half a day even. But what I ran into very quickly was that the way the server is set up via SQL is that you basically have to launch each individual zone and area on the game, where basically everything like dungeons, every single zone, all that stuff is split up to its own world server, which is fair. Even World of Warcraft works that way. But the way I had to set up the game, or the way I could set it up, made it so that if I were to launch every part of that server, it would eat up so much CPU at it would inevitably take up all my RAM, all my CPU, and it would even start dumping into the disk drives, and it quickly became too much. So I had to, when I do play it, I have to basically limit the zone stat to the zones I'm going to be in. So basically only launch the zone servers that I'm going to be in and then shut them off as I leave them, which is very annoying because I didn't have to do that with any of the other games. Number two, the other issue is that every account is a GM account, and while you can turn it off, GM accounts, while they do have a lot of power, they can generate items and all that other stuff and level themselves up, they can kill monsters, etc. So they can do a lot. They don't have the ability to do things like loot. Like, there's limitations on the GM accounts themselves. And while I think there is a way to actually circumvent this if you either do it through maybe the database in SQL, I was looking for it, but I'm not super sure. Otherwise, like, you would have to try to change something in the game in order to allow a GM to basically be able to play the game like a normal player. So that is really annoying. And the reason why it might not seem like a big deal initially is, yeah, of course you can make a basic account and then get access to everything. But if you make a basic account and have access to everything, then you don't have access to the GM side of things, which is kind of important sometimes in order to efficiently play these games in a single player manner. Because without the ability to basically deal with certain situations in the game, such as bosses or you know, modifying stats, etc., then certain aspects of the game are just not going to be possible for you to solo. The only other workaround I can think of is for you to have a GM account on the side, and then of course that GM account can show up and support your character account whenever you want. But like I said, it's tedious and it feels a little less necessary. I am very sure that if I spend some time, I might be able to find a way to fix it. But at this point, by the time I got to Runes of Magic and I got it up and running, I was kind of like the gasoline tank was drained at that point. I had kind of come to a full stop and I was satisfied with what I did with everything. And it's a big part of it is because of the Aura Kingdom situation, which took up so much of the time in this project. In fact, it took most of the time of this entire project. But with that being said, Runes of Magic, I would give it like a 75% playable, because there are things that have to be changed in order for the game to run properly in some ways. One, there needs to be some way to maybe make the server running a little bit more efficient. So that would be something you would have to work on. Two, you would have to also work on a way to circumvent some limitations in the game that are designed for it to be an MMO. And one of those is not just the GM account limitations, but even if you're on like a normal account, you can't enter things like instances and dungeons because they're locked until you have a party. So there are these limitations on the game that will basically force you to, once again, similar to Forsaken World, only quest for the most part. And while you can engage with other aspects of the game, it's going to be several hoops for you to jump through in order to actually access them properly. And I'm just not here for it. I do want to try to, but I don't want to have to spend all this time trying to edit it right now. Later on, when I get the energy for it, maybe. Same with Forsaken World. But as of right now, that's where it's at. So yeah, you can get Runes of Magic up and running. It's not super difficult or anything. But like I said, the damn thing is got some things that you're going to have to work through in order to get it working perfectly. So that is all I actually got up and running. Now, I did find server files for other games like Aeon Online, which I know shut down a while ago. I believe I found Terra, but I'm not super sure about the source on that one. I need to look more into it. And if I did find, heck, even Black Desert Online, but again, I had like hit my kind of stopping point for a while. But if there is more interest in either exploring the content of other MMO servers or even just exploring the ones that have shown off, I'd be more than happy to look more into these games or play more of them for you guys. But ultimately, my opinion is that yes, a lot of MMOs, it's very doable for you to run your own private server through them. Yeah, you could set these up for public private servers if you know what you're doing. I'm not going to do it, but it is an option for you if you do get your hand on these server files. And it is a very interesting way to experience these games and see them from a different light. I am incredibly fascinated by the idea of removing as well the barriers of the cash shops and just seeing what the games are like without all that. Because sometimes these games kind of build themselves up around the cash shops, and a lot of people, they're fun, and maybe not even they're fun, but their reason why they're so invested in the game is because of maybe money they spent into the cash shop at some point. You know, it's kind of curious how the games can hold themselves up without the cash shops, or, you know, loot boxes and other random roulette type systems that they implement that you pay with the real world money. So to me, that is a very interesting thing, and I'd like to probably explore it more at a later time. But ultimately, it's going to do it for this video. If you've been wondering where I have been, I have not given up the YouTube dream. I've just been very busy. I am going to finish my degree at this point, and I am on track to graduating by summer of next year. So spring semester would theoretically be my last semester next year. But that's what's been taking up a lot of my time, because I'm taking as many classes as I can, including summer and everything, in order to try to graduate as fast as possible, because I really need to get that done. So that's why I have been kind of absent, and I definitely have missed you guys, and I hope you guys will still be willing to watch my content as I put it out. I am understanding that maybe some people miss some of the streams and other things, and I do want to try to do those again, but just understand that because of my current situation right now, it has limited my time a lot more, and so that's kind of why you haven't seen it that much of me these last few months. But I'm going to still be here. I'm going to still be making videos on my own time and about things I'm interested about. And of course, later on, whenever I do graduate, I will definitely get it, hopefully more time to spend with you guys. And once again, like back in the summer or fall of 2024. So once again, thanks for all the support, guys. If you liked it, please let me know. Leave a comment, like the video, dislike it, subscribe if you can. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one.